I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have a lot of tourists that come through here. And the other day, I was driving, and I got behind one of these tourists, and they didn't know where they were going. And more importantly, they couldn't decide where they were going. They kind of knew where they were going, I guess. But they kept stopping and going and changing lanes without signals, and all the traffic behind them was getting so frustrated because these people didn't know what they were doing. And finally, they're in the middle of a major intersection, and they just completely stop right in the middle of the intersection and then turn and cross 3 lanes of traffic to go the opposite direction. And everybody's honking, everybody's going crazy. And I thought, isn't that exactly what we do in life when we can't make up our mind? We sit there and we hem and we haw, and the whole world's trying to get around us, and then before you know it, we turn and cross 3 lanes of traffic and almost cause an accident of all of it simply because we couldn't make up our mind and decide.
So here's the big question. How do everyday people like us who didn't grow up wealthy and were not taught how to be wealthy in school, how are we supposed to learn to think, invest, and grow wealth like the top 1% without compromising our ethics and our values? My name is Jeremy Whaley. That was my big question. This podcast will give you the answers. You're listening to Think Rich Radio. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Think Rich Radio. It's so fantastic to have you joining me as we start another week and as we continue down this journey of personal development and learning what it means to transform our minds and to start thinking differently so that we can experience more of what we were created to live in this life and on this planet. Today, I want to do something just a little bit different. As you probably know, if you've been listening to the show very much, I've been working on a new program, a personal development program called Think Rich 2020. And as I've been working on this, I was listening to a segment of it and I said, you know what, that would be a great podcast right there as it is. And so I decided to actually pull out this whole chunk. It's actually a complete segment of the training, and I'm going to share it with you. Just play the audio here as part of the podcast. And if you want to watch the video, I'm actually going to put the video on my website at jeremywhaley.com. All you need to do is go to jeremywhaley.com, click on podcast, and then click on this episode, which happens to be episode number 23. And you can watch this whole segment right there. So without further ado, I'd like to share this with you. This is a segment called Why We Can't Decide. Let's talk a little bit about why we can't decide. I mean, it's nice to talk about the need to make a decision. It's even nice to put the little inspirational stories out there so you can do it. But let's be honest, we're human beings. And if it was that simple, then everybody would be making decisions all the time. But instead, what do we see? Most people fail to make the decision. They tend to put it off because they don't want to make the wrong decision. So what's behind that behavior? And the answer is fear. Fear is the emotion that's behind the behavior of not making a decision. The root of every failure to make a decision is fear, every time. It's a fear of making the wrong decision. And so whether it's reasonable or not, whether it's logical or not, we've told ourselves a story that if I do this and it's the wrong decision, then the consequences will be unbearable. And I don't want to take unbearable consequences, so what do? You put it off and you're like, well, let me think about it a little bit more. Well, then you end up putting it off for weeks or months or years at a time, and you end up going absolutely nowhere. So we put it off, we make some excuses, we come up with all sorts of stories, and then one day you end up watching a training course like this saying, why is it that I'm 40 years old, I'm 50 years old, I'm 60 years old, however old you are, and you're thinking to yourself, I still haven't done some of these things in my life. Why not? Well, it's time to stop putting off things, and it's time to start understanding what your behavior is so that you can make some corrections to it. And to understand that, we need to understand pain and pleasure. As human beings, we do more to avoid pain than we will do to gain pleasure. This is a core psychological principle of humanity. We want to only have good things, but we really don't want to have bad things. And so what ends up happening is rather than pursuing the good things, which would be pleasure, a lot of pleasure, we end up trying to avoid the bad things, and we end up somewhere in the middle. We become meh. Right? What is meh?
As you can see, I'm an emoji. A meh, to be exact.
Meh is neither good nor bad. It's just meh. Well, wouldn't it be greater if we could be super, super happy? Lots and lots of pleasure? Making all sorts of decisions that are leading to wonderful things in our life? Of course it would be great. But what if I make the wrong decision? What if that decision leads to all the worst things that can happen in my life? And then all these bad things happen, and I just think, if I could just go back to where I was and being meh, Meh is better than, oh, it's horrible. And the human psyche understands this. It's unconscious. We don't think about it. It just happens. And on an unconscious level, when you've told yourself this idea that it's going to be more painful if I make the wrong decision than to make no decision, then you end up making no decision. And you end up living a meh life. Neither great nor really painful, just meh. But then the question is, how long can you live meh before it starts to take a toll? It works for a little while. It works for a couple months. Works for maybe a couple years, or even 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. And then one day you wake up and you realize I'm 60 years old and I didn't accomplish any of the stuff that I really wanted to accomplish because I was afraid and I didn't want to make the wrong decisions, and I've been meh. I'm 60 and I'm meh. And you look back at your 60 years of life and you say, what did I do? I worked the same job or roughly in the same field, and I made just enough money and we got by. We were good enough, but we weren't exceptional. We were just meh. Didn't really have a lot of pain. We avoided all the pain, but we didn't really do anything extraordinary. Why not? Here's why. Because in order to live extraordinary, you have to take big risks. Now, not necessarily dangerous risks, but risks that pull you out of your comfort zone. And here's what you need to understand. Your level of extraordinary, your level of the quality of life that you live is going to be in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty that you learn to comfortably handle. So if you want to live an extraordinary life, a life fully alive with all of the extraordinary things that this world has to offer you, then you're going to have to learn to dance with that fear that could ultimately lead to some pain, because it's true. Everything that's wonderful in life has something that's opposite of that is not wonderful. But if we didn't have the opposite, then the wonderful thing wouldn't be so wonderful, would it? It would just be meh. You see, meh is neither great nor horrible. It's just meh. It's right there in the middle. You don't want to be meh. You want to be extraordinary. Think about romance. If you've ever found a person that you fell in love with, it was a risky thing to do, right? You probably had a few failed relationships getting there. In fact, you may have been scarred and you thought, I'll never date anybody again. Then one day you meet the love of your life and you get married and you took the risk again. That was a risky thing to do, to give your heart up, to care about somebody, to love somebody and put yourself out there. But you had to go through that to get the extraordinary experience of loving somebody and having a life partner. In order to do that, what did you have to do? You had to take the risk that you might have your heart broken. That was a risk, though, that you were willing to take, because you said, you know what? It's happened before. I've been able to survive. And I really want this extraordinary experience of finding love. You see the relationship there? So the pleasure of finding love was greater than the risk of the pain. Now, some people are the opposite, and maybe you're the opposite. You may have decided that, you know what, love's not worth it. I'm tired of all this pain. I'm just going to be meh, and I'll live without love. And that's fine too. That may be where you're at. But you know what? The truth is, in the depths of your heart, you know there's more. You know that we were created for relationships, and you know that if you could find an extraordinary relationship that was full of passion and love, it would be worth going for, right? Life is worth going for. It's worth going to be extraordinary. But in order to be extraordinary, you have to dance with the fear. In order to be extraordinary, you have to take the risk that may have unwanted consequences. So how do you think through that? How do you measure that so you make better decisions? Well, here's how you do it, and I found this to be extremely effective in my life. And here's what we do. We have to be okay with the worst case scenario. It's that simple. We have to be okay with the worst case scenario. Now, let me relate this to the stock market, because that's really where I learned this. I learned in risk management with trading the stock market, I have to go into the trade knowing what's my worst case experience. If I were to lose in this trade, how much money am I going to lose? And then before I ever place the trade, I have to get mentally and emotionally prepared that when I place this trade, I could lose that amount of money. Am I okay with that? And if the answer is yes, then I can place the trade. If the answer is no, then I say, I'm not going to place this trade. And then I started thinking about that, and it worked with my trading career. So I said, well, what if this works in other things? And I realized that that is a principle of life. If you want to make good decisions, you look at the pros and the cons, you look at the consequences, and you say, this is the worst it could be. Could I accept that? Now, if the consequence is if I do this decision, then I'm going to lose my life and I'm going to die, that may not be a consequence that you really want to take. But maybe the consequence is, well, worst case scenario, I have to shut it down and start another business. Maybe the worst case scenario is, I lose a little bit of pride, I'm a little bit embarrassed, but I can handle a little bit of embarrassment to go out and try something new when the results could be complete financial independence. Is it worth taking a risk of a little bit of embarrassment, talking to some friends that you didn't necessarily know as well, or maybe doing something that might be a little bit of, just a little embarrassing, not humiliating, just a little embarrassing. Could you do that to experience the extraordinary pleasure of complete financial freedom? You see how you think through that? And then as you start to think through these things, you just look at the best case and the worst case, and you say, that's what I'm working towards. If I got that, would it be worth this? You say, well, yeah, it would be worth that. So then you take the risk. Now, here's what a lot of people do. They say, well, I really want this extraordinary result, but I don't really want that pain, and I have no guarantee that I'm not going to get the pain. So since I don't have the guarantee, I'm not going to really take that risk, Well, that's not how life works. If you want the pleasure, you have to take the risk, which means there's going to be some times when you have some embarrassment. There's going to be some times when you have to get uncomfortable and you have to talk to some people you don't want to talk to. There's going to be some times when, frankly, you're going to have some financial difficulties because you made a bad decision and it hurts you. You might lose some money. But you know what? At the end of the day, taking those risks and building that muscle, that emotional muscle, so that you can work towards the extraordinary things that life wants to give you, working out that muscle and taking those risks is worth it. And as you start to, mature a little bit in this area, as you start to think about what does it really mean to get out of procrastination and into decision, you're going to have to step up and say, I really do want to receive what life wants to give me. I want to take that extraordinary stuff. And I'm willing to do that. And I'm willing to take this risk so that I can receive all those extraordinary things that life wants to give me. And once you can get to that point and you can start making decisions and start taking those risks, whether it's financial or emotional or in a different way, once you can get there, you're going to discover that life has been waiting to give you extraordinary rewards for your entire existence. Wouldn't that be amazing? So now it's time. Go claim your rewards. Go claim the extraordinary things that life wants to give you. And don't be afraid. Go ahead, take some risks. Hey, thank you everybody for joining me. I hope you really enjoyed that. Again, that is an excerpt from my upcoming training series, Think Rich 2020, which is about to be released, but you can watch that one right now. All you need to do is go to my website, jeremywhaley.com, click on podcasts, and this is episode number 23. And if you go there, then the link that I've embedded for this episode is actually a video, which you just listened to here, but now you can actually see the video if you want to do that. So feel free again to go over to jeremywhaley.com and click on podcasts. There's also a place there for you to register to be alerted when Think Rich 2020 is officially available, so you can pick that up and start making incredible changes in your own life. Hey, thanks again for listening. Thanks for sharing the podcast. We're getting great traction on it. Please continue to do that. Help me out in that way. And if you've not subscribed for whatever reason, please go to Apple Podcast or Stitcher or Google or Alexa or wherever it is that you like to listen to podcasts. Go into that platform and subscribe so you can be alerted as soon as the latest episode is released. All right. Thank you again for everything. And I look forward to next time. Until then, remember to live extraordinary.